quotient, divisor, remainder. That's what it looks like when you write out the long division. It's the same as writing this from left to right. This is your dividend. What you're dividing by is called the divisor. And the answer you get is the quotient. And the reason why we're talking about that is because I'm going to use those words. It's much easier than always saying this. The number under the division bar, the number you're dividing by, the answer that you get. It's just much easier to say those single words than to say all those other things. So the first half of your notes on the front is long division with no remainders, and the back has remainders. So this first baby problem that I'm going to talk about is regular numbers. There's not going to be a remainder. I'm going to go through it slowly because I want you to think about the steps carefully. All right. The very first step we do here is we say, okay, 5 goes into 1 how many times? None, right? So then what do? You have to look at the 12. And you say, okay, 5 goes into 12 how many times? 2. Where do you write that to?
Right on the bottom, right below the 12. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So then what do we do? What do we do with that 2? Multiply by the 5. Multiply by the 5 and bring it down here. And that's 10, right? So you write your 10. And you're like, okay, math, yay. What do you do with that 10? Subtract it. Okay, so keep that in mind. You subtract that. And then you do 12 minus 10. That gives you 2. What's next? What's the next part?
Bring down the 0.
Bring down the 0. You bring down the next term. And then you start this process all over again. But now you're looking at the 20. 5 goes into 20, how many? Or 20 divided by 5 is what? 4. So that goes up here. You take that 4 times the 5. You bring it down. You subtract, and you get 0. Which part of all that is your answer? The 24. Okay, that's the quotient. Right. So I'm going to use this as a model when we over here with the x's. Okay. So keep all this stuff in mind. So over here with the algebra one, with the variables, you're going to set up your division house. And I don't remember the actual word for that. I have to Google it every time I want to know it. The division house. So looking at this problem compared to that one, which piece is going to go inside?
The x squared plus 9x.
Yep, that long stuff. Okay. So it's going to go here, x squared plus 9x plus 20. And so then the x plus 5 goes out here. The thing is, with the x's, what is the corresponding parts here where I want to do the same thing over there as I did here when I said 12 divided by 5. Right, so 12 divided by 5, it goes in twice. Here's what that looks like over here. You look at the first terms. Okay, not the whole thing, just those first 2 pieces. And you say, okay, what is x squared divided by x? That's your first step. So over here it was 12 divided by 5, and we put the 2. Here it's x squared divided by x. And what is that? It's just x. Here when I got the 2, I put it above the 12. Here I got x. I'm going to put it above the house over here, and I'm going to line it up with the other x. Okay, you want that all up and down, you want the exponents to be the same. You're lining up the like terms. So x squared divided by x is x. Now that x is in the same spot as the 2 here. What did I do next after I found the 2? Times 5, which was 10. I'm going to do that here. X times this entire thing, x plus 5. And we're going to write it down there. Okay, so that's x times the divisor, which is x squared plus 5x. And you write it down. What do you think I'm going to do with that? I'm going to subtract it. Okay? So that's the same thing as the 10 here. We subtracted it. But you have two things that you're subtracting. Subtracting is the same as taking the opposite sign. So I'm going to subtract the x squared by making it negative, and the 5x by making it negative. You have to subtract everything, all the pieces. So now what happens to those x squareds?
They cancel out.
Absolutely. That's going to happen every time if you're doing your math right. The x squareds cancel, and now I have 9x minus 5x, which is 4x. So thinking about that problem, what do you think I'm going to do next here?
Bring down the 20.
Bring down the next term, right? So over here, after we subtracted, we got 2, and we brought down the 0. Over here, what that looks like is you bring down that 20. And then it starts all over again, just repeats itself. You're looking at this first term now, this first term divided by the divisor's first term. So that was the first, this was the first chunk of math. Now we're doing 4x divided by x. What is that? 4. What am I doing with that 4? Where does that go? Up here. So I'm going to take that 4. Mm-hmm. It's the first terms. You're doing 4x divided by x to get yourself started. 4 times that x plus 5, you're going to bring it down here. So let's look at what that math is real fast. 4 times x plus 5, that's the divisor. It's 4x plus 20. I'm going to write it down here. Daniel? Mm-hmm. If you had x to the 4th over x, that would be x cubed. And so what am I doing with these two things next? Subtracting. Which one? The whole thing. Both of them. Very good. Both of them. And the reason why I sort of set you up to think about that for a second, the most common mistake at the subtraction step is to subtract the first thing and forget about the second thing. Right? So you don't want to do that. And these both happen to cancel, right? So I'm done. So what's the answer here? X plus 4. Perfect. That's your answer. Okay? I want you to take a minute and try that next problem for practice. And then on the back, we're going to level up. So what goes inside, the long thing or the short thing? What's our vocabulary word for that piece? Anyone? Dividend. Very good. And what's our vocabulary word for this one? Divisor, right? It's what you're dividing by. Yeah, and I see. Yeah, and whatever's going to go here is the quotient. Yep. So why did I highlight that yellow stuff? What was going on? It's the first number in each part, right? That's where you start. So in this case, I'm looking at the first thing here and the first thing here. And I'm going to do what with them? Divide them. Which one's going to go on top when I do that? This one, because it's this divided by that. Top, bottom. So 2m squared divided by m, which is what? 2m. It goes on top, in the spot where the quotient goes. What am I going to line it up above?
Oh, sorry.
The m. You're lining up like terms, the ones with the same powers. It's going to go here. All right, so raise your hand if you got that far. You got the 2m? Okay, great. So then once you get something in that spot for the quotient, what do you do with it? Multiply by the m minus 3, the divisor. So it's 2m times this entire thing. And that's the same thing you do with the regular numbers, right? So that's 2m squared minus 6m. And that goes underneath right here. So 2m squared minus 6m. And what are we doing with both of those things? Subtracting. If I'm subtracting 2m squared, it becomes negative. What if I subtract negative 6m? What happens? Makes it positive. How many of you forgot to change the sign on the second thing? So the m squareds cancel, and then I have 1m plus 6m, 7m. Then what?
We bring down the negative 21.
Good. Bring down the negative 21. And this place is where everything starts all over. So now you use this 7m divided by that m for your next step. Do you want another 2 minutes to try and finish it out now? Okay. Let's talk about it. So you're starting with the first terms again. So it's 7m divided by m. What is that? What's the sign on? What is the sign on there? It's a plus, right? Why are y'all putting minus when it should be plus? Anybody can tell me why? Because did you see this minus here and figure like it kind of has to be a minus above it? Okay, no. Whatever you get here, that's going to be what your sign is, all right? So then 7 times the m minus 3, and you bring that down. That's 7m minus 21. And when you go to subtract those, it's really just means you're changing the signs, right? So positive 7m becomes negative, negative 21 becomes positive, and when you add those, you get 0. You got no remainder. What part is your answer?
2m plus 7.
Good, 2m plus 7. Okay. So you see, even if you're not fully comfortable with the process yet, I hope you can see that it's really just repetition, and that's hopeful because once it clicks for you, you'll be able to do any problem. It's just repeating over and over. Does anybody need the screen up anymore? Okay. So a little brain break. If your house was on fire and you could only say 5 things, what would they be? Side is with remainders, but also in addition to having remainders, it's kind of it's a longer problem as well, just for practice. So real quick, I've got a number problem on the left, just like the last side. It's going to have a remainder. And there's something special I want to tell you about how to write the form we're going to write our answers in. So I'm going to go through this real fast. So we do 119 divided by 5. 5 goes into 1? No. 5 goes into 11 twice. Multiply, bring it down, subtract, drop the next term. 5 goes into 19 3 times. Multiply by the 5, bring it down, subtract. There's no 0. If you have decimals, you might. Oh, I'm not going to convert it to a decimal. I'm stopping right here. Remainder 4. Okay, so this is where I'm going with this. Remainder 4. So if you were not trying to get a decimal, and you could just write this as a mixed number, 23 and 4/5. Something you might not remember about this form right here is it means addition. And this is the form we're going to use to write our answer with the x's. It's going to be your quotient here, plus, I always want this plus in your answer, and then the remainder there, and the divisor there. I can't wait to have my clock back up on the wall. I don't realize how often I look at the clock until it's not there. So the problem with the x's, it's longer, but there's also like a weird thing happening. Do you see what the weird thing is I want to talk about? It's missing a cubed. Is that what you are saying? Okay. It's missing an x with the power of 3. You see how it skipped it? So do you remember from past math what you do in that case? You put an x3 in there, but you have to be careful about how you write it. How many x3s are there? There's none. What number do we have for none? 0. So what you want to do is use 0x cubed as a placeholder. We are talking about how there's no x cubed in there. And so to hold its place, we're going to put in 0x cubed. Yeah. So that we can have it as part of the problem. Wait, what? Okay. So set up your problem with your, now remember, this problem is going to be like the one you do by yourself and turn in. So we're all on alert, right? We're all paying attention. So the long thing goes inside. Be sure you do your 0x cubed placeholder. And then x plus 2 out front. What are the two things I'm going to start with? X4 here, and the x here. I'm going to divide them. Good. So I got x4 divided by x. What is that? x3. Now that's going to go in the spot for my quotient, but what am I lining it up with? The 0x3, right? It's going to go over the like term, so I'm going to put it right here. X cubed. And what am I going to do with that x cubed? Perfect. Multiply it by the divisor, the x plus 2, and then bring it down. Whatever that is, you're going to write it there. So let's look at what that is. X cubed times x plus 2, x to the 4th plus 2x cubed. See how these problems use everything we've learned so far this week? Multiplying with exponents, adding and subtracting with exponents. Our lesson from yesterday, dividing by just one term, uses all of it. So that is x to the 4 plus 2x cubed. See, that's why we needed the 0x cubed there. So we have something to match with the x cubes that we're going to get. And what do we do with both of those things? Subtract. Both of them. Yeah, so those cancel. And then 0 minus 2, negative 2x cubed. Bring down the next term and start all over again. But now with this first term. Okay. Take a few minutes and try and finish that out. Because you can know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. One arithmetic mistake messes everything up after that. So we're all good to this step, right? So then the next step is negative 2x cubed over x. And what did you get there? Did you get negative? Negative 2x squared. And that goes here. And then, let me switch to a different color. So then you take that negative 2x squared times your divisor. So that'll be negative 2x cubed minus 4x squared when you distribute that right there. And you're subtracting those things, both of those things, both of them, the second one as well. So you change their signs. Negative 2x cubed becomes positive, negative 4x squared becomes positive. So who's good there? If you made any corrections that you might have to correct. X cubes cancel. What's negative x squared plus 4x squared? Positive 3x squared. And what comes down next? 5x. And now I'm taking that 3x squared divided by that x up there. So this first term divided by this first term. And what is 3x squared divided by x? 3x. That goes up here with above the 5x. And I'm going to take that positive 3x now, multiply it by the x plus 2. Three x times x, good. 3x squared. 3x times 2. What am I subtracting next? Right, both of these things, right? Negative 3x squared takes an opposite sign. 6x takes an opposite sign because you're subtracting it. From right here, this 3x times x, 3x times the 2 is where the 6x came from. Those cancel. 5x minus 6x, negative 1x. You bring down your last term. Oh my gosh, this problem takes like 2 years. But this is the last step. So now this is your first term. Need me to slow down for a second? Anybody? Need to catch up? Negative 1x, that first term divided by x in the divisor, that's negative 1. That goes here. And then negative 1 times the x plus 2 is negative x minus 2. And that goes here. Mario? Yeah, there's actually 2 different ways you can go. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. So subtracting those means change the sign, so that gives you a remainder of negative 4. Now, if you want to save some room on your paper, since where you wrote your answer in that quotient spot, just leave it there. Instead of rewriting the whole thing, just go back up there and put your remainder. So I told you over here, at this stuff right here, that I want it written like this. Quotient plus remainder over divisor. So technically, how that would look over here is plus negative 4 over x plus 2. But Mario, he said that at first, and then he said, or maybe it'd be minus 4 over x plus 2. I would take either way, okay? It either needs to be plus the negative 4, or you can just write minus 4. I don't care which way you do it, as long as you get it right. It is. If someone walked in right now, they think y'all are just, look how smart y'all are. Look at all this math. It looks like when they, in the Big Bang Theory, when they're doing work on their whiteboards. So what I want you to do right now is that last problem, turn it in, but here's the catch. I am not helping you on the problem. Because when you turn it in, I want to be able to see exactly what you understand at this moment and what you don't. So even if you get it wrong, if your process is right, so here's your possible grades, 100, a 95, or a 90, okay? It's 100 if it's perfect. It's a 95 if your process was correct, but you made math mistakes and it messed up your answer. And then it's a 90 if you tried. Now, if you hand me in some trash, you're not going to get a 90. So you have to actually try it. I'll handle the trash cases on a case-by-case basis. So, begin.